They thought they'd find adventure and beauty in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but instead they found tragedy. From deadly swimming holes to treacherous trails, these aren't just unlucky accidents. They're haunting stories of people who ventured in and never came back. What went wrong in America's most visited national park? Let's find out. It was supposed to be a peaceful family hike, one last winter adventure before the year ended. On December 27, 2018, Dr. Laya Janney, her husband Tyke, and their 3 young sons set out along the Porters Creek Trail in Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The trail was familiar, well-traveled, and considered safe, nothing out of the ordinary. They walked side by side, unaware that with every step forward, they were moving closer to an unthinkable tragedy. Lila was a 42-year-old pediatrician from Plano, Texas. She had dedicated her life to caring for children, working tirelessly at Cook Children's Clinic in Fort Worth since 2007. Colleagues spoke of her warmth, her brilliance, and the deep compassion that seemed to radiate from her. At home, her world revolved around her 3 boys and the man she loved. That day, she walked the trail surrounded by everything she held most dear. Then the wind changed. What began as a calm afternoon shifted without warning. The breeze turned into a roar. Fierce gusts ripped through the forest, shaking trees and whipping leaves into the air. The family pressed forward, trying to stay together. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. A towering tree, weakened by the relentless wind, groaned and snapped. It was falling, fast, and in the worst possible direction. In that split second, Lila saw what was about to happen. Her youngest son, 6-year-old Gibran, stood directly in the tree's path. There was no time to call for help, no time to scream, just one instinct: protect her child. Without hesitation, she threw herself over him, wrapping her body around his small frame, shielding him from the impact. The tree crashed down with a deafening thud. Lila took the full force. The weight and momentum were too much. Her body absorbed the brutal blow, one that would have crushed her son instantly. She died there on the trail, in a final act of pure, unthinkable love. Gibran, though injured, survived. His leg was broken in 2 places. He had cuts and bruises on his head, but he was alive because his mother gave everything to make sure he would be. Rescue teams rushed to the scene. Park officials responded swiftly, airlifting Gibran to the University of Tennessee Medical Center. Surgery followed, and doctors were hopeful. Physically, he would recover. Emotionally, the road ahead was long and heartbreakingly quiet without Lila. Tyke, now a grieving husband and the sole parent of 3 boys, had to find strength he never knew he had. In the aftermath of the tragedy, as they returned home to Texas, one more cruel twist awaited. Somewhere on their flight, a GoPro camera, one that held the final photos and videos of their family trip, the last images of Lila alive, was lost. Desperate, the family launched a public plea, praying for a miracle. Social media picked it up. Strangers shared their story, and somehow, the camera found its way back to them. It didn't bring her back, but it gave them something. A glimpse, a memory, a piece of her they could still hold on to. Lila's final moments weren't marked by fear or panic. They were defined by courage, by a love so fierce it defied instinct, logic, and even survival. She didn't just die in that forest. She saved a life, and in doing so, she left behind more than just grief. She left behind a legacy of unimaginable strength. It was meant to be the highlight of their trip, a thrilling helicopter ride above the Great Smoky Mountains. The kind of memory you carry for a lifetime. The pilot was experienced. Everything pointed to a perfect, scenic journey. No one aboard had any reason to feel uneasy as the rotors picked up speed and the helicopter lifted into the sky on April 4, 2016. Inside the Bell 206L were 5 souls, each caught in that delicate space between excitement and awe. The pilot, 38-year-old Jason Dahl of Sevierville, Tennessee, knew the route well. He'd flown over these hills and valleys hundreds of times. Among his passengers was 49-year-old Jana Morvant, joined by her children, 22-year-old Hton and 18-year-old Parker Rasmussen, on what was supposed to be a special family outing. Hton's boyfriend, 21-year-old Michael Glenn Mastas, had traveled from Texas to be there. This was meant to be a joyful reunion, a rare moment of closeness between a mother and the children who'd traveled from North Carolina just to see her. The flight was only supposed to last 12 minutes. As the helicopter soared over Sevier County, the passengers marveled at the forests stretching endlessly beneath them. The winding trails and rolling hills bathed in sunlight. For a few quiet minutes, everything felt magical, until it didn't. Then, something went terribly wrong. The helicopter began to lose altitude, its descent not gradual but sudden and uncontrolled. Near a ridge just a few miles from Dollywood, the aircraft clipped the tops of trees. There was no time to recover. In a split second, the machine spun out and slammed into the hillside. Then came the explosion. The crash was violent. The helicopter flipped onto its side and erupted into flames, a massive fireball lighting up the trees as smoke billowed into the sky. People nearby heard the blast and rushed outside, only to see another burst of fire tear through the wreckage. The flames spread quickly, consuming everything in their path. There was no escape, no second chances. By the time emergency crews arrived, all 5 people were gone. What they found wasn't a crash site. It was a graveyard of twisted metal and charred earth. The helicopter had been obliterated. The fire had stripped away nearly every trace of what had been a happy, hopeful group of people just minutes before. The investigation would be long and complicated. The cause of the crash wasn't immediately clear. So much had been lost in the flames, but eventually, a horrifying truth came to light. According to the National Transportation Safety Board, a critical mechanical failure brought the helicopter down. Severe wear inside the fuel pump's drive shaft splines had gone undetected. A lack of lubrication had caused the internal parts to deteriorate until the pump could no longer deliver fuel to the engine. In mid-flight, the helicopter simply lost power. There was no backup, no warning, no way out. It didn't matter that the helicopter had passed inspections or that it had flown dozens of safe tours that very day. One hidden flaw, one missed detail, was enough to turn a dream into a nightmare. For Scott Rasmussen, the father of Hton and Parker, the pain was unimaginable. His children had gone to visit their mother, expecting a day of smiles, laughter, and photos. Instead, they never came home. Michael's mother, devastated and in disbelief, could barely accept that her son was gone. Jana's loved ones struggled with the fact that a mother, in the middle of a joyful reunion, had died with her children by her side. And Jason, the pilot who had spent years guiding others through the skies, had gone down with the aircraft he knew so well. Lawsuits followed. Accusations of negligence surfaced. Maintenance records were scrutinized, but no amount of legal action could undo what had happened. No court decision could bring back the lives lost in those terrible 12 minutes. After the crash, safety protocols were re-evaluated. Many helicopters in the area were retrofitted with crash-resistant fuel systems. But for the families left behind, the changes came too late. Ann Hton wasn't just a visitor to the Great Smoky Mountains. She was part of them. At 73, she knew every twist in the trail, every scent in the breeze. Over the decades, she had hiked all 900 miles of the park's trails, volunteered over 4,000 hours at the Oconaluftee Visitor Center, and completed the Appalachian Trail piece by piece. She had even visited all 63 U.S. national parks, from Alaska's icy wilderness to the volcanic peaks of American Samoa. Few knew the land like she did. Fewer still loved it so deeply. So when she set off alone on a cold January day in 2025, it wasn't reckless. It was routine. Anne had done this countless times. She was cautious, prepared, always telling a trusted friend her plans. The Smokies were her backyard, her sanctuary, her second home. She parked at Smokemont Campground, shouldered her pack, and disappeared into the trees. Her plan was simple. A 2-day loop she'd done before, winding through Bradley Fork, Chastine Creek, and Hughes Ridge, eventually reaching the remote Enlow Creek Trail. It was steep, rugged, and wild, but Anne was no amateur. She had conquered worse terrain and harsher conditions. This was supposed to be just another quiet journey through the woods she knew like the lines on her palm. But Anne didn't come back. At first, no one panicked. Delays happen. Maybe she'd taken a longer route or stopped to rest. But by the second day, silence started to feel heavier. By February 1st, concern had turned to fear. Anne had been reported missing. Search teams sprang into action. Rangers, firefighters, K-9 units, volunteers, people who had worked beside her, hiked with her, learned from her, fanned out into the Smokies. They scoured ridges and ravines, combed over ice-crusted trails, calling her name into the frozen wilderness. But there was no answer, no sign, no tracks. Anne had vanished into the woods she loved, leaving nothing behind. Then, on February 2nd, they found her. She was just 4 miles off Enlow Creek Trail, in one of the park's most isolated corners. Her phone had gone dark shortly after she began. Alone and unreachable, Anne had succumbed to hypothermia. The cold had crept in silently and relentlessly, claiming even someone as seasoned and resilient as her. She died in the very wilderness that had shaped her. The news rippled through the hiking community like a tremor. It didn't seem possible. How could someone so capable, so experienced, be taken like that? But nature doesn't care about experience. The wild doesn't make exceptions. And even the most prepared adventurer can be caught off guard. For Anne's family, the loss was devastating, but not without meaning. She had died in the place she loved most, doing what made her feel alive. Her life had been built around wonder, purpose, and giving back. From her years as a special needs teacher to her tireless service in the national parks, Anne had devoted herself to others and to the land. She was more than a hiker. She was a guide, a mentor, a friend. Her name echoed on the trails and among those who had walked beside her. Park rangers remembered her as a cornerstone of the Smokies community. She had even been nominated for a National Park Service Award, a tribute to her selflessness and spirit. In early March 2025, they held a memorial for her. People came with heavy hearts, but also with stories of her quiet perseverance, her boundless curiosity, her kindness on the trail. She had always pushed herself, not for recognition, but because she believed in living fully. In the end, the same wilderness that gave her so much took her away. Her story remains not just as a loss, but as a warning, a reminder that nature, for all its beauty, is still wild, still dangerous. Even the most fearless among us can be humbled by it. They were just passing through. A few backpackers, deep in the wild stretch of the Great Smoky Mountains, making their way through the dense, isolated beauty of Hazel Creek. It was September 11th, 2020, and everything about the morning felt still, almost too still. When they spotted an unoccupied tent at Campsite 82, they thought little of it. Maybe the camper had wandered off for water. Maybe they were hiking nearby. Nothing seemed wrong, until they went a little farther. Down by the creek, something stopped them cold. A bear, and something else. Something horrifying. The group didn't wait. They turned and raced back the way they came, hearts pounding, minds trying to process what they'd just seen. When rangers and wildlife officers arrived, their worst fears were confirmed. A 240-pound black bear was still there, scavenging near the body. The scene was brutal. The earth near the tent was torn up with drag marks, streaks of blood in the dirt. Something violent had unfolded here, something fast, something fierce. The body, badly decomposed and nearly unrecognizable, belonged to Patrick Madura. He was 43 from Elgin, Illinois. He had come out here alone, likely seeking peace. Hazel Creek was known for that kind of escape, remote, pristine, and untouched by the noise of civilization. It was a place where people went to lose themselves, to breathe deeply and listen to the silence. But for Patrick, it had turned into something else, something unimaginable. The autopsy told the rest of the story. Puncture wounds, deep lacerations to his neck, head, chest, and limbs, signs of a violent struggle, fractured ribs, hemorrhaging, the kind of injuries that didn't happen after death, but during life. It was a black bear. These animals are no strangers to the Smokies. Nearly 2,000 of them roam the mountains. thriving in the dense forests and endless ridges of the half-million-acre park. They're wild, but they're not usually killers. That's what made this so chilling. Black bears are shy, curious, even playful. But when food is scarce, or when humans become part of their calculation, when fear fades, they can become something else entirely. There was no food left out at Patrick's campsite, no reports of careless behavior, no warning signs anyone could see. But something changed that night. Maybe the bear was hungry. Maybe it had grown used to the scent of humans. Maybe it saw an opportunity, and Patrick never had a chance. This wasn't just scavenging. The bear didn't stumble upon a lifeless body. It created one. Officials confirmed it. This was only the second deadly bear attack in the park's history. The first was in 2000. Now, after 20 years, the unthinkable had happened again. In the aftermath, Hazel Creek Trail was closed. Rangers put up warnings, urged caution. The messages were everywhere. Travel in groups, carry bear spray, store food properly, never approach wildlife, and if a bear charges you, don't run. Stand your ground, fight. But for Patrick, it was too late. Yogesh Patel, a 25-year-old from Oak Forest, Illinois, had set out with his family to enjoy a day of adventure in the Great Smoky Mountains, a place known for its rugged beauty and stunning landscapes. The Smokies, the most visited national park in the U.S., are a magnet for those seeking to explore waterfalls, swimming holes, and scenic views. Among the many attractions was Midnight Hole, a deep, picturesque pool beneath a 6-foot waterfall, a place people flocked to, drawn by the beauty of the water and the thrill of leaping from the surrounding rocks. On September 14th, Yogesh and his family arrived at Midnight Hole. The water was crystal clear, the kind of place you'd want to dive into, especially on a warm afternoon. They weren't the only ones there. Others swam, laughing, enjoying the serenity of the park. But what should have been a peaceful day quickly spiraled into something far darker. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Yogesh stepped onto a log that extended over the water. Whether it was to get a better view or just to embrace the moment, no one could know for sure. But what happened next unfolded in a heartbeat. Yogesh slipped. One moment he was standing, the next he was falling, plunging into the cold, deep water below. The shock of the fall hit him hard, and the current took him almost instantly. The pool, which reaches depths of 18 feet, was deceptively dangerous, and before anyone could fully react, Yogesh was struggling. His family and bystanders rushed to help, frantic, but the water was unforgiving. His arms flailed. His body fought the current, but there was nothing they could do. He was disappearing beneath the surface, and no one could reach him in time. At approximately 7:30 p.m., a desperate call went out to emergency services. Within 30 minutes, rangers and rescue personnel arrived at the scene, but the darkness had already begun to fall, turning the situation into a nightmare. Visibility was almost gone, and with the fast-moving water, their search was hindered. The rescue team had no choice but to pause the operation for the night, leaving Yogesh's family to endure a heart-wrenching, agonizing wait in the darkness. They could only hold on to hope. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke, the search resumed with a renewed sense of urgency. A team of 43 emergency responders from North Carolina and Tennessee was dispatched to aid in the recovery effort. Divers descended into the frigid water, meticulously combing the pool where Yogesh had last been seen. Hours passed, each minute stretching longer than the last, but the pool offered no answers, no sign of his body. By early afternoon, time had already run out. The divers found him. Yogesh's body was discovered submerged 18 feet below the surface, lifeless, swallowed by the very beauty that had drawn him in. The recovery was completed by 1 p.m., but it didn't bring closure. It only left a grief-stricken family, broken by the suddenness of the loss. Yogesh's drowning at Midnight Hole was a sobering reminder of the dangers lurking in nature's seemingly serene corners. Despite the allure of the water, Midnight Hole had been the site of multiple tragedies before, with others falling to their deaths or suffering serious injuries. The park had long warned about the unpredictable nature of its waters, urging caution to anyone who considered swimming there. Still, for all the warnings, the water claimed another life that day. In the aftermath, park officials again reminded visitors of the risks, emphasizing water safety. But for Yogesh's family, those warnings came far too late. What should have been a day of fun and adventure had turned into a heart-wrenching loss that would never be undone.